Teresa.
And I'm Callista, and this is Culprit. And today we were going to talk about Gillian McAllister's Caller Unknown, which I think came out in the end of May, but it's about a mom, Simone, and her daughter, Lucy, visiting Texas from England when Lucy gets kidnapped. And we both really liked it, right?
Yeah, I really liked it. I like all her books. I was actually going to look at them and jog my memory, but I didn't get a chance to. But yeah, she's one of my favorite mystery writers. I don't know if I mean, would you describe them as like a domestic thriller or a mystery, or how would you describe her books?
I'd say mystery thriller. But I mean, she is definitely one of the higher quality writers of that genre.
Definitely. I mean, I think we've mentioned before we like, Alice Feeney, Ruth Ware. But yeah, I feel like she just does really good with what do I always say, the uh, morality, ambiguity kind of thing. She's really good.
Yeah, I always read the reviews at the beginning of books, and I think a couple times I've seen her referred to as the queen of the moral dilemma.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Because, I mean, and it's not like, it's not heavy handed or, I can't think of anything else. I shouldn't say things when I can't think of an example. But um, where it's just you are not that the writer hasn't done a good job, but yeah, kind of that you are really led to just believe this one thing, or like a twist comes out of nowhere, or it's really obvious who you're supposed to like or what you're supposed to agree with, or oh, they have this dilemma, but this way is obviously, the only appropriate way. She just does a really good job. I mean, a lot of it's probably character development. She just does a really good job and makes you think, and you don't have everything figured out.
Yeah, I feel like you can really, because you can empathize with the characters, you can put yourself in their shoes to the extent that that even if their choices are questionable, you're like, well, shit, I don't know what I'd do in that situation either. Maybe I'd do the exact same thing.
Right. And it's not like, oh, somebody has decided to do something completely unfounded. It's, if they do something that is questionable, like you said, you can kind of, maybe put yourself in that situation or think, okay, well, maybe I wouldn't have done that, but, I can kind of see why they did do that.
Yeah, and in Caller Unknown, after her daughter gets kidnapped, she chooses to follow the kidnapper's instructions by not going to the police, instead doing what they say, which I don't think this is a spoiler since it's near the beginning of the book, where she basically does a drug run from Mexico to the US, despite, her parents having struggled with, well, not despite, a perspective of her parents struggling with drug addiction to get her daughter back, and so that the kidnappers don't kill her. She calls the police, which her husband, what's his name, disagrees with.
Is it Gabriel?
I think you're right.
Okay.
But yeah, she follows the instructions and people end up dead, and they ultimately find themselves on the run with limited options on how they're going to prove that what they say actually happened. And I know we both felt like Lucy, the daughter, wasn't completely trustworthy. And
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Yeah. I'm always it's a flaw, but I always kind of want to figure out what's going to happen at the beginning of a book. Like, ooh, should I like this character? Am I not going to like this character? Oh, are they doing something, that they shouldn't be doing? Or they're, anyways, I just do all this questioning of stuff. But I kind of immediately didn't trust Lucy. And, I mean, I won't say if that was founded or unfounded, but, and when Lucy's their only child, and when Simone is talking to Gabriel and saying, what happened, he immediately wants to go to the police, and she doesn't want to do that. And, maybe I've seen too many movies or something, but I would have definitely been like Simone, like, no, they said they would hurt her. Like, what if they're, of course, what if they're just bluffing? But what if there's the slightest chance that I made the wrong decision and, the unimaginable happens?
yeah, and I think we were actually watching the second season of Karen Peary, which is on Amazon, at the same time, where there's a kidnap, and the parents in that do listen to the police, and they never get their daughter back. So yeah, of course you would do that.
Yeah, yeah. And, no spoilers, but I would do all the things that Simone did. You you just do, yeah, this is my kid. They told me to do this. Oh, I have to do this crime? All right, let's go. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And I actually did look it up. Apparently, the husband's name is Damien.
Oh, all right, so I was completely off.
I mean, there's an IE in both of them.
There you go. There the A is the second letter.
There you go.
Ah, yeah. I would love some of these writers that we really like and we, kind of get their books with, barely a cursory glance at the description. It's just like, oh, they've written a new book. Let's get that. I'd really love if they would be turned in to a caveat, a decent show. I don't know, a movie, a show. But then as I'm saying that, I'm thinking of the things that have been turned into shows or movies based on books. And I feel like, generally speaking, we're just never happy about that, so
Yeah, no, I don't want them to be turned into, anything else.
okay, it tarnishes it.
Yeah, yeah, and I wouldn't say, like, when you were saying that you always question things, that's a flaw, but, like, I always feel like I'm, like, reserving judgment to, like, the end of a book because I'm like, "Okay, let's see how this plays out," and because, like, I don't trust, like, any of the characters to start off with, but even with that said, like, with Gillian McAllister, with all her books, always, like, right from the get-go, there's with the protagonist, I always like them.
Yeah, yeah, and that's even even I can't immediately think of another example, but where there's something kinda questionable right off the bat, she does a good job with, the reasoning for maybe they did this thing that, isn't what everybody would do, or this is the reason why, and, yeah, I like all of her protagonists.
Yeah, and I feel like, when you said, like, with, like, the character development and explaining, like, the reasoning and really going into, like, the rationale, I feel like a lot of the thrillers, that are maybe less more poorly written, it's kind of like I don't wanna say, like, all plot-centric books are bad, but it's like, this happens, this happens, this happens, the characters act this way, now they're reacting, now they're reacting. There's not a whole bunch of development of their reasoning and their I guess, almost like their doubts about themselves, which doesn't really ring true. Whereas, with Gillian McAllister, like you said, like, the protagonist, you're really stepping into their mindset. And that makes it, I think we found both had problems with finding the ending a little unbelievable.
A
It makes the
little.
whole thing overall more believable.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, yeah, as you were saying, when you're talking about her, it makes me think of another book that I just read, which I'll think about if I'll recommend it to you or not, but where you're just kind of thrown another character and thrown another character without, like, really any development or why is this character important or I don't it's kind of like they don't want you to figure out what the twist is or what the ending is, so they'll be kinda so far I mean, all thrillers are a bit far-fetched, but so far-fetched and so kind of out of left field that it's not that you didn't see it coming, it's that it doesn't make any freaking sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, but, yeah, I would definitely recommend.
Yeah, me too. And yeah, even with the twist in this book, which we both didn't see coming, although you saw something coming that I didn't about who was involved, the person who was involved, it did, looking back, completely made sense.
It did, and again, I'm kind of happy when I figure out, like, oh, a little bit and that I'm right. I know, I think I can't remember, you told me, like, a book that you wouldn't recommend recently, I don't know what it was, but, like, you could see stuff coming, like, right off the bat, and you were right, and it's just kind of a bummer because, you wanna be entertained, but you want, like, a good twist, or you want, like, "Oh," now you think about it, like you said at the end, "Well, okay, that makes sense," but during it's not like it's just, like, completely out of left field, like, that doesn't make any sense, like, if you think about, like, "Oh, okay, I can see that, alright."
Yeah, in the book, you were referring to was Mad Mabel by Sally Hepworth, and yeah, I saw, like, 4 out of the 5 twists coming pretty early on.
Yeah, that's not great, I have to be careful, I get up so excited, a new book because I feel like I constantly wanna try new authors and, we tend to be burned a little bit by that. But there were I have to pay attention that when ads constantly come up, it doesn't mean that that's, like, a great book, it just means that that's, something new, it's a new release. It doesn't mean that maybe we're gonna love it. I think I liked the premise of that, but and I think I compared it, thought that it sounded like another book, but you said, "No." No, and you saw, like you said, what, 4 to 5 twists coming, so that's not great.
Yeah, and it's not like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I sees everything coming." I'm like, that just wasn't very veiled, and so the twist was rather obvious, which I'm not sure if that's worse than the twist being completely out of left field, and it's like, "What the fuck just happened?" But neither is
Right,
ideal.
right, right. Happy medium, people, happy medium.
Yes.
Alright, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Alright, well, let's get into the episode. Today, we are heading back to the Pacific Northwest to discuss a case where unmitigated greed allowed a young child to die at the hands of someone who should have protected him above all else. Newman Lake, Washington, situated about 30 minutes from Spokane, had a population of less than 5,000 people in 1999. This was an area where neighbors looked out for each other, and what drew Robert Wood to the town where he lived with two of his six children, 16-year-old Teresa and 11-year-old Christopher. The morning of February 9th unfolded like most mornings at the Wood home. The house was busy with everyone hurriedly eating breakfast so they could leave in time to make it to work and school. Teresa left first at 8 a.m., followed by Robert at 8:20, telling Christopher to hurry and finish his cereal so he didn't miss the bus. About 10 minutes later, one of the Woods neighbors saw smoke seeping out the windows and called 911. Firefighters rushed to the scene where a group of neighbors were nervously waiting outside the Wood home. Information travels fast in small towns, and the neighbors had just learned that Christopher hadn't made it to school. One concerned man was attempting to find a way into the burning house, frantically calling Christopher's name.
Firefighters quickly entered the home and searched every room, including closets and anywhere else a child overcome with smoke inhalation or fear might hide. Thankfully, the house was clear. The 11-year-old wasn't inside. While firefighters searched the house and put out the fire, a neighbor called Robert's cell number. Learning that his house was on fire and his son was missing didn't seem all that troubling to Robert. He volunteered that Christopher probably started the fire, and when it got out of hand, he got scared and was likely hiding somewhere nearby. After calling his insurance agent, because priorities, and doing who knows what else, he finally arrived home about 2 hours after the neighbor's call. Investigators didn't think Robert seemed that interested in finding his missing son. In fact, when he agreed to be filmed for the local news, he clearly placed the blame for the fire directly onto Christopher. Facing the camera, he made a plea to his son, telling him that he needed to come home and not to worry about what happened to the house. He wouldn't be punished, inferring that Christopher started the fire and then ran away.
If he was pushing the narrative that Christopher ran away, how would he have seen the news? Hmm.
I mean, that's far from the only problem with Robert's story. Christopher was the youngest child from Robert's first marriage and was only 3 when his parents divorced. Just before third grade, he left his mother's house to live with his father. His parents thought he needed some discipline, which Robert could better provide. When Robert's second wife, Debbie, filed for divorce, she questioned her husband's parenting skills, saying that Robert was always hard on Christopher, but treated Teresa like a princess, which is a surefire way not to breed resentment between your children.
It was February in eastern Washington. It was freaking cold. If Christopher couldn't be found quickly, investigators were afraid that he wouldn't survive in the freezing elements. Volunteers and investigators went door to door and fanned out into other areas of the small town, searching. But Robert didn't join them on their search. When he was allowed to, he did go back into his house to see what could be salvaged, seeming much more concerned about the material items in his home as opposed to his missing son. His behavior was odd, and police were skeptical of Robert, who said he last saw Christopher at about 8:20 that morning. Christopher's mom, Jo Lynn, also thought her son could have started the fire. She told investigators that Robert had recently told her that he was having problems with Christopher wanting to play with matches and start fires.
Well, that's convenient.
So much so. The next day, about 15 miles from the Wood home, a man stopped with car trouble and noticed a blue backpack with Christopher's name written inside. Investigators and volunteers combed the area where the backpack was found, but there was no sign of Christopher. One day later, on February 11th, a snowplow operator found his body down a snow covered embankment off a remote road in Deer Lake, about 50 miles from his home. Police didn't believe he was murdered there. There was no evidence, and the area had not been disturbed. They believed that a vehicle had stopped near the embankment and dumped Christopher, hoping that the body would not be found on such a remote road in the dead of winter. The woodhouse on Blue Skies Road became a sad shrine. Both adults and kids left cards, balloons, and flowers, with many young kids scrawling poems or "We miss you" on various poster boards. Christopher's friend Tanner wrote that he was his very, very, very best friend. One neighbor girl asked other children to give teddy bears in Christopher's memory. So many kids and parents donated bears that it filled 8 extra large garbage bags. But bears were donated to local shelters.
Obviously, that doesn't mitigate the tragedy of Christopher's murder, but at least some people are decent.
Agreed.
Neighbors were scared that there could be a predator on the loose, abducting children from their homes, killing them, and then dumping their bodies. Was a murderous pedophile in their midst? The autopsy revealed there was no evidence of sexual assault, but there were ligature marks around his neck, and the cause of death was determined to be strangulation. Further results showed zero evidence that Christopher had started the fire. There was no soot on his hands or in his lungs, and no carbon monoxide in his blood. They did note something odd, though. His shoes were on the wrong feet. It appeared that someone, not Christopher, had put his shoes on the wrong feet, most likely while standing over him. While detectives were searching for Christopher's murderer, other investigators believed the fire was suspicious and worked to determine if it was arson. An accelerant sniffing dog was brought to the house to determine if any such substance was present. The dog, who we assume was a very good boy, found nothing. Investigators determined that the fire had started in the family room and the point of origin was the family sofa. Investigators decided they needed more expertise and contacted the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. ATF needed to establish if the fire could have been started only 10 minutes before a neighbor noticed it at 8:30, aligning with Robert's account that he left the house at 8:20. ATF agents purchased 3 identical sofas and set the furniture on fire using various methods to determine how fast the fire and smoke could have been generated. Their conclusion? It was possible that Robert could have set the fire.
Investigators quickly began honing in on their only suspect, Robert. Investigators who had been uncertain of his story from the day of the fire began taking a much more thorough look at who he was. They quickly realized he was living beyond his means, even though he earned about $100,000 a year, a substantial amount in 1999.
I'd say.
I mean, it's about $200,000 in 2026 money. Robert had made home improvements, painting the house, adding French doors to the master bedroom, buying a trampoline and a jacuzzi, in addition to having a large garage built on his property, large enough to hold his RV, snowmobiles, and whatever other toys he wanted, with ample room to work on his hobby of restoring cars. The improvements were enough to grab the attention of his neighbors, who did wonder how he afforded 6 children along with improvements to his property. Law enforcement began looking into their suspect's questionable behavior after he had been fired and his former employer had contacted the police regarding his theft. Robert had created fake invoices beginning in 1996 in order to obtain gas, equipment, and building materials for personal use. He confessed to the theft on January 8th. Despite this healthy income, Robert had had financial problems for years. He filed for bankruptcy twice, and several creditors had filed liens against his home. 3 years before the family home was set ablaze, Robert pleaded guilty to fraud charges after applying for credit at a Spokane bank using a fake Social Security number. He served home detention and paid restitution of about $7,000. He was placed on probation for 3 years until December 1998.
In the early 1990s, he had been charged with theft for taking $1,300 from an elderly woman who was on a fixed income for a roof repair and then bailing on the work. He told his victim that he had lined up another contractor to complete the job, but that was a lie. The company didn't exist. He served 90 days in jail for this theft and was ordered to pay restitution. An officer involved in the case said he had zero remorse for his actions.
People who commit crimes against the elderly and children, I mean, they're the worst.
They truly are. CA Roofing, a contractor in Spokane, filed a complaint with the police in 1991, stating that Robert would order materials, promising that he would pay cash when he picked the materials up. Instead, once the supplies were loaded into his vehicle, he just drove away, which is pretty brazen. Another former employer, R&R Roofing, also accused him of dishonesty, saying he stole equipment from them between 1990 and 1993. After they filed a complaint with the Spokane County Sheriff's Department, Robert was arrested on the outstanding warrant stemming from his theft from CA Roofing. Even though he'd been convicted of theft, used someone else's social security number, had a home foreclosed on, and was even banned by a judge from having a checking account, he seemed to always land on his feet, always finding a job and having money to spend on the things he wanted.
A neighbor who had been friendly with the Wood family and even provided them a place to stay after the fire told law enforcement that Robert had asked him to hold on to a briefcase. The night of the fire and before Christopher's body was found, Robert brought the briefcase over, which had no signs of soot or fire damage, for safekeeping. The briefcase had been removed from the house before the fire. Police also received a call from a local pharmacy. The clerk had seen the story on the news and had been developing some film when he realized the person who dropped off the film was the father of the murdered boy. Robert had dropped off a film roll to be developed, hello 1990s, a few days after the fire. On the roll were pictures of the house before and after the fire, from the exact same angle. If someone didn't know that their house was going to be damaged by fire, why would they have so helpfully taken before photos? He was obviously trying to anticipate what the insurance company would need to process his claim and issue payment for the fire damage.
The stupidity of criminals always gets me.
Right? They are way too full of misplaced confidence.
Uh-huh.
Investigators continued their meticulous search of the house. When searching the garage, they found what appeared to be stomach contents on the fender of one of Robert's cars. Similar matter was also found in the bed of the truck Robert had been driving on the day Christopher went missing. Chemists can't get DNA from stomach contents due to the acidity, but that didn't mean there weren't other ways to have the material analyzed. The samples were sent to forensic microanalyst William Schneck. Analyst Schneck was able to delineate patterns in the samples. His initial theory was that the patterns were unprocessed wheat and corn. An iodine test proved his theory. Teresa had told investigators that she saw her little brother eating Marshmallow Mateys cereal, a generic version of Lucky Charms, the morning of the fire. Wheat and corn were both ingredients in Christopher's favorite cereal.
Detectives speculated that Christopher had been killed at home and then transported to the rural road in Deer Lake in Robert's truck. Cell phone records showed that Robert was near the spot where Christopher's body would later be found when his neighbor called him with the news of the fire and his missing son. Another helpful neighbor told the police that Robert usually had two garbage cans on his property. Detectives could only find one. During questioning by investigators, Teresa shared that her father had taken his truck to a self-serve car wash in Spokane Valley a few days after the fire. Having located the car wash, detectives found a discarded garbage can in an area that bordered the car wash lot. The garbage can looked identical to the one that was at Robert's house, but they had to be sure. Both garbage cans had specks of paint overspray, the kind of overspray that would land on anything not covered if you were using a paint sprayer while working on a car. Analysts determined that the paint residue on both cans was the same. The inside of the discarded garbage can was further analyzed, and more stomach contents, along with tiny metallic particles, were found. The particles matched the design on Christopher's backpack. Police believe that Robert strangled Christopher, who vomited during the assault. Robert then picked up the son he had just murdered and carried him to his truck where he brushed against his car's fender. He placed his body in the truck bed and put his shoes on, but on the wrong feet. He then rolled the garbage can to the truck and put Christopher's body along with his backpack into the can.
Literally discarding him like trash.
I mean, this all just proves that Robert is the real piece of human garbage.
Definitely.
During the investigation, investigators found life insurance policies on Christopher. There were $10,000 policies on each of Robert's kids, except for Christopher. Christopher had three policies worth a combined total of $80,000. Policies on children aren't rare. Many parents or grandparents use them as an investment tool, paying the relatively low premiums so that the kids can cash them in when they are 18. Surprisingly enough, Robert was the sole beneficiary of Christopher's policies.
To the outside world, Robert looked like a success. He had a nice house, a new fiance, took trips out of state for car races, and made a good salary. But he was in debt. His overspending was catching up with him. In January, just weeks before Christopher's murder and the house fire, his employer confronted him about the theft. He was fired, and they called the police. Robert would later admit to stealing more than $100,000 from the company. Coworkers told investigators that he stole gas, building materials, and equipment. After he was fired, he asked a real estate agent to look at his house. Though he was hoping the improvements he completed would add value to his house, he had actually made too many improvements for the neighborhood. He would never get out what he put into it. Adding fuel to the fire of his own making, his fiancée also broke off their engagement.
Good for her.
Too true. On February 24th, Robert was arrested at the Spokane County Jail. He had been held at the jail since February 11th, the day Christopher's body was found, on the unrelated theft charges. He had also been named a person of interest in the murder. Police made the preemptive move to arrest him at the jail for investigation into the arson and murder before he potentially made bail on the theft charge. They feared if he made bail, he would flee the area. Robert was charged with first-degree murder and first-degree arson. Prosecutors also filed an alternative charge of second-degree murder. This was so a jury had options regarding a potential conviction.
Robert gave a tearful jail interview before his arrest, saying he had nothing to do with the arson or his son's death. Robert's ex-wife and Christopher's mother, Jolynn, believed that Robert had nothing to do with Christopher's murder. She said she hoped police would start looking elsewhere. She believed that Christopher set the house on fire and then panicked and fled. She thought someone picked Christopher up and murdered him.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, no mental hoops to make that version of events make sense. Robert said he would never do anything to hurt his son, saying he was very special, a good boy, and he deserved to have a life, which he certainly did. On May 31st, 1999, Robert Wood was found dead in his cell. He had hanged himself. His death had been the fourth suicide in the Spokane County Jail in the last 13 months. He hadn't been on suicide watch. Correctional officers said he had been checked within the hour before his death. Robert's attorney, Scott Mason, said that he had recently met with his client and he showed no signs of suicidal behavior.
With his suicide, questions remain with no answers, though it seems with the premeditated actions of increasing the life insurance policies, removing financial records, including those policies, getting an estimate on the home's worth, taking before and after photos along with the end of his engagement, and being fired from another job with criminal charges pending. In his mind, he had no options. He needed money, and the easiest way was to kill his child, the one that was worth more dead than alive. Filicide is more commonly committed by fathers than mothers. Because of Slayer statutes, a murderer is never going to get the proceeds from a life insurance policy of the person they killed. But when a killer's ego is so strong that they think they will get away with it, reason goes out the window. That's if there was ever any in the first place. Next time, we'll be discussing the case of Okay, I'm gonna try this. Callisto can probably correct me. We'll be discussing the case of Chisako. Is that right?
Yep.
Chisako Kakihi? Chisako Kahihi? No, you say
Kakehi. Okay, I'll put my practice to use.
okay.
Shi Shisako Kakehi.
Okay, that sounds great.
All the sources we used for this episode are in the show notes below. If you'd like to suggest a case for us to discuss, you can email us at culpritpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us at culpritthepod on Instagram and at culpritpodcast on TikTok. Feel free to leave us a comment, rating, or review to let us know what you think. We'd love to hear your opinions.
See you soon.